Looking good, looking good, looking good. Alrighty. That's better, huh? Pop this chat message out. That's better, huh? Pop. Okay. Pop out the chat. Says I'm offline. Here we go. Got nobody. Got 5 minutes. Streaming configuration quality. Excellent. I actually like the frame that I made last week when I had me and Zool on. I think that looked a lot better. This one I had just some random screenshot up in the back. I don't know that I like going on so early. Got 5 minutes to just sit here and do nothing for a little bit. I guess it's all right, but there's not really any way to know that I'm streaming the way I want to be streaming exactly until I do it. Hey, 4 viewers. How about that? Hey, welcome guys. Welcome guys. Got 4 minutes until we get started. I just like to start up a little bit early to make sure that I have everything set up and good to go. Drop that down a little bit. Hide the video preview because it's distracting. Episode 5 notes are up. 4 minutes to go. We can play our outro music. Gonna keep that going. Had a fun day today. Went out to the beach. Last year was our first year here in the fall, winter, and that's Tampa, Florida. And it stayed like 80 degrees, 85 degrees all the way through December, and we got down in the 40s and 50s in January, February. But our 2 months of winter was like, oh, what the hell is this shit? But today, man, it was 63 degrees by the beach, and I went out there. I didn't go in shorts, my son did, but we ended up having to go to one of those little shops by the beach that sell just about everything. It's called Surf Style. Yeah, hold on. I don't know if you can see that or not. Anyway, Surf Style. It's a little cheesy store to buy a little jacket. What about you? Anything fun? Anything good going on? My favorite trumpet. See, sometimes I think I'd like to have a co-host. Kind of kill some of this awkward silence. But then other times throughout the week when I'm working on shit, I'm like, no, I really don't want to get with somebody every single week and try to coordinate it. It's kind of hard. Most of the time I do want one, though. Dolphins beat the Rams. Still 4 viewers. Appreciate you watching. Couple minutes. Oh, you know what I've never checked? Wanted to make sure that actually started over from the beginning when I started it. I won't vape during the show. It's distracting, both to the viewer and to the listener later, because you can hear that shit coming right through the microphone, right? T-minus 1 minute. I'm also going to try controlling the volume to my intro music from the tablet this time instead of using my mixer. Because using my mixer, I have to reach way over. I got to find it. It is kind of dark in here. I realize that. And really, the only light that I have on me is the computer screen coming on my face. And anyway, hard to see. I don't want to mess with that, so I'm gonna do it here. Let me give myself. Oh, let's start recording. There we go. That's enough silence to capture what I need to capture. And here we go. Good evening, good Sunday evening, my gaming brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 5 of Grown Up Gaming. It is Sunday, November 20th, 2016. I'm live from beautiful, sunny Tampa, Florida. But we can't necessarily equate sunny Tampa, Florida with warm Tampa, Florida, as I was talking a little bit in the pre-show. Let me see if I can turn that down even more. There we go. Today was 63 degrees. I went by the beach. I know a lot of you are in places where it's in the 40s, 30s even. I think I've seen some snow pictures out there in places. And I got to say, I don't want it. You can have it. It's kind of annoying raking up my leaves, I guess, a little bit. But otherwise, just a light jacket. That's really all I need. Today's been fun. Good day for me. Aside from the beach, I came back and had a couple hours to kill before jumping on to do the show. So I hopped in World of Warcraft for a little bit, and a good friend of mine invited me to a plus 10 Mythic. Now, if you've listened from the beginning, you know how I feel about Mythic Plus, and how I have felt. I'm actually finding myself reevaluating a little bit about how I feel, because I guess these affixes start happening after Mythic level 3, Mythic Plus level 3. You start getting little things added on, and in a level 10, you've got more shit that's on there. And we had bolstering, which is everybody's got that this week, I guess. So everything, if something dies next to it, it makes the next one a little bit more powerful. But at level 10, these mobs had an affix called skittering, and my God, I didn't know what that meant, so I had to ask them, "Hey, what does skittering mean?" And that's where, and my friend said, "Oh, it's where you'll drop aggro occasionally." Bullshit. That wasn't occasionally. It was you pull 3 mobs, and every few seconds, one of the mobs would lose aggro and go after whatever DPS was beating it in the face, and it was just really, really awful. And as most folks know, and if you don't, there's a learning experience. 8 seconds on the CD for taunt. So you taunt something because you're not getting aggro back just from punching it. You have to taunt, and so 8 seconds between that taunt and the next taunt, you've got 1 or 2 mobs going after somebody else. You're just fighting like hell to stay alive. We didn't beat the timer. The good news is on the plus 10s is that you're guaranteed an 880 item, I guess, at the end, the beginning of your next week in your little chest thing. So anyway, so it was fun, and it was difficult. And I said to my friend, I said, I'm not going to step foot in a Mythic Plus again where skittering is involved. And she said, "Do you see?" And she was the one actually who made it a point to say Mythic Plus was probably the most challenging in-game content. And I kind of see where she's going with that. And I might reevaluate my position as I go forward. From before, where I stated that rating should be what gives you the highest level gear because of the coordination that it takes, the studying, the things that you have to do to get ready for it. But I'm not ready to change that opinion yet, but I am open to think about it a little bit more. What else has been going on with me? I got a little obsessed with my Demon Hunter alt this past week. It's my alliance. I'm Horde for life, man. I've always been Horde, but I do like playing with the Convert to Raid folks, and so I have my Demon Hunter over there. I did get it to 110 a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to make sure I got this thing ready for potential off night raiding if I wanted to. So I finished the class campaign, the Order Hall campaign, and man, what a really intuitive design to that one. On my Druid, on my main, it was do some world quests, and then there were 10 4-hour missions that you had to do. So ultimately, it was 40 hours worth of class hall missions. And, thank goodness for the app because I was able to just run through those during my workday. But it just didn't seem very, what was it, creative. It didn't seem like a creative approach to finishing that. On this guy, sure, I had some order hall missions to do. I think there were 4 or 5 that I had to do, but I also had to go out and gather scrap parts, and I had to make the little home base order hall area, whatever. That's actually a ship. I had no idea it was a spaceship until I was gathering those parts, and I had to run and do 15 bosses and dungeons. I thought I would cheese that and run through some LFR, but nope. They put a silence on that, and you had to do them in dungeons. So while I got the LFR experience, air quotes for listeners, LFR is not an experience, but anyway, and then at the end, you drive this spaceship to somewhere. I don't remember where it was. If you know me at all, I don't pay attention to stuff like that. And I had to drop down and kill some demons, and then I had to call in this guy to come in and just blow the shit out of this door and go in and kill some of these other 2 guys. And no, it was really fun. And after that, you had this little ceremony, and they named you Slayer. Not like the rock band, even though, Slayer's pretty badass, I guess, for some people, not me. But anyway, it's a really good time. So otherwise, it's just regular raiding. We got into Trial of Valor. First 2 bosses down, it's cakewalk, and then hell yeah. My God, more like hell no, because this lady, she's got more mechanics than a freaking AMCO center. It's just ridiculous. It's fun in a way because we're having to think. But what it feels like is that you go from Emerald Nightmare, which they admittedly undertuned, especially at the Mythic level. Now, we're not Mythic Raiders, and we have no desire to be, as I've said before, but the level of challenge, it steps up. It seems like there should be a crescendo of challenge where the first boss is, okay, whatever. It's first boss. Second boss is a little harder, and that's the case. And the third boss should be noticeably more difficult, but not to the point where you're like, what the shit is this? And Helia is you got a lot going on. And we did get her down to 30% or so, which basically, if you finish phase 2, she's at 32, 33%, something like that. But it just seemed like it wasn't in line with the difficulty, as you progress through a little raid like that. Outside of that, that's all I've been doing at WoW. I helped people do Mythic Pluses throughout the week. I did 6 or 7 level 3s, level 4s, trying to get this guy his trinket. But I've been playing Overwatch a little bit more this week. I'm getting more involved. Arcade mode came out last week or 2 weeks ago, as everybody knows, and man, that's really fun. And I hope they kind of keep this thing where it's appealing to the non-competitive scene. I don't like to feel pressured in games like this. Shooters are not necessarily my bag, but this is Overwatch. It's a little bit different. I went 1v1 the first time around. And I said, hey, let's see what that's like, because I'm not all that great at Overwatch. I have a couple characters that I think I can play fairly well, and they stuck me with a Pharah and a McCree back to back. Those are 2 characters that I have no experience on whatsoever, and I got my ass handed to me. But that was a good time. Heroes of the Storm. We're going to move through the games a little bit. Heroes of the Storm, man, I really try to play MOBAs. I try to like them. I've got League of Legends on my computer. I've got Dota 2 on my computer. I've got Vainglory on my phone, and of course there's Heart of the Storm, which I've been into off and on since the game launched. But I don't know if it's just that I'm not skilled enough, or I just don't get the appeal, or whatever it is. I wanted to try Varian. I thought it would be cool because there's an iconic guy from Warcraft. They put into another game and tried to make him intuitive and or fun, and he is a lot of fun to play if you're looking at it from perspective. But again, MOBAs aren't really my bag. So what I really found, one of the other free-to-play characters was Rhaegar. I think I'm saying his name right. He's a healer, a shaman healer, and I really had fun playing the healer characters. The problem that I have with the healer characters is that mana is just gold. You can't, man, you start casting a couple heals, you're just as quick as you can be. So I found myself, harking back several times throughout a match, and to me that just wasn't a whole lot of fun having to ghost wolf back to the group the whole time. But I'll keep giving it a try. Maybe I guess with anything, the more time you get into it, the more fun it is, and maybe that's something I need to get back into and play a little bit more. In Hearthstone news, well, not really news, but for me, I did finish up the League of Explorers expansion on normal, and the most difficult thing, Arch Thief, Golden Arches, Rafam. That guy was such a pain in the ass, but when I finally beat him, hey, what's up, man? When I finally beat him, it was like, holy shit! I actually felt good about beating that guy because man, he was so difficult. And if you haven't played, the League of Explorers, I don't know if it's an expansion or just an adventure or whatever it is. Oh my goodness, this isn't going to work. I'm going to get distracted by. I'm going to get distracted by the chat. This is the first time I've had people in the chat room, so we're going to pop that down a little bit. Anyway, Rafam takes your cards and he gives you some. They give you some random deck to play with. And his hero ability is that he pulls some shit out of the portal all the time. So the idea is that you want to be able to build the shittiest deck possible, so that way he takes that deck and he doesn't have a lot of moves against you. But realistically, he's not really using a whole lot of those cards. He's using the little things that he pulls from his little portal, and that's it. So it made it difficult, made it fun. I had to learn to use that deck that I was given from there, and a lot of times it would be 2 or 3 shots or 2 or 3 turns, and I'd be dead, and that was it. And then finally, when I finally had a good deck to play with, or some good RNG pulls, and I was able to turn that around on them and wipe them up in about 3 or 4 turns, where I still had 30 health and knocked them out, whatnot. But Diablo didn't play it once again. It's just no surprise there. It isn't compelling enough for me to log back into it. The seasons aren't enough to keep me coming around. To me, it's just another reason to roll another tune, I guess. I guess that's the only appeal for Diablo for a lot of folks. I don't know. Nothing really earth-shattering there. But anyway, so that's the news. That's my week. It's not really news. Like I've said before, this isn't a news show. Yep. By the way, you're echoing. Let me see. Yeah, I don't hear that. They unmute, or I've muted the. I'll need to edit this out. I've muted the preview, so I shouldn't have the infinite loop thing going on. Anyway, so the topic of this week, I wanted to talk a little bit, or a lot of it, whatever it is, about the Chris Metzen interview that I really hope a lot of you have gotten a chance to listen to. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to it and would like to, it's on the Instance feed with Scott Johnson. And Chris Metzen was one of those guys that everybody knew, or at least thought they knew. Everybody knew his face, and they kind of knew what his personality was like in public. And when he came onto that interview and talked for an hour and a half with Scott Johnson, it was just a really eye-opening thing. And it was really heartfelt and sincere, and it really touched a lot of people in a lot of ways. And I think the biggest thing that I got from it, and it really hit me like a ton of bricks, was when he said something about imposter syndrome, which is what tonight's topic is about. Never heard imposter syndrome before. Like I said, I'm 40 years old, and I'm not exposed to a lot of the psychological things that are out there, I guess. But imposter syndrome, as soon as he said it, though, it just rang a bell. And when people say my life flashed before my eyes when they get scared about something, that's not how it hit me. But as soon as he said imposter syndrome and explained how he felt, it's like I could see everything great that I've ever done and all of the self-doubt surrounding each and every one of those accomplishments. So that's what I wanted to talk about. And I don't know if it affects everybody the same way, or if it affects creative people more ways than other folks. My Twitter feed is predominantly gamers and artists and musicians, and I see more things on that feed regarding different anxieties and depressions and things like imposter syndrome, which again I'd never heard until Chris Metzen said it. And what it makes me wonder, are we the creative folks, maybe I'm not all that creative compared to some other people, but are the creative people more susceptible to these types of things than others? What is it about our lifestyle that, lets that kind of stuff in? So the thing with imposter syndrome, just, it's one of those things where no matter how good you are, if you're good at something, no matter how many successes that you have in life, you just can't accept the fact that you're responsible for them. You keep asking yourself, is it all fake? When are people going to find out that I'm not this good? But you keep performing. You keep doing the great things that you do, and you're still wondering. I've mentioned in the past that I'm a manager, a sales manager, a leader. I guess you could say that, depending on how you approach what I do. And my employees tell me constantly, and I have a pretty large staff. I have probably the largest staff of any other location in my company. And my employees tell me all the time, "Yeah, hey man, you're the best manager I've ever had. I've terminated people, and they thank me for the opportunity for being able to work for me. My boss tells me all the time that I'm good at what I do. His boss tells me all the time that I'm good at what I do. My performance numbers are always there. My coaching's always on point. My my folks get developed and promoted into other places. They look to me for guidance and advice, but it's never enough. It always feels like whatever it is that I'm doing is just a fake. Like one day they're going to find out that I'm just this guy just bullshitting along. It's like a glass house. It's all going to come crashing in. Even this week, and I've had an employee dealing with some things from her peers. It's not a sexual harassment thing, just some retaliation on some things that some people thought that she had said or done, and it was to the point where she was ready to quit. And my manager said, "Hey, instead of doing that, we've got an open position over here. Why don't we just transfer you?" And at first she was all over it, and then she called me, and they called him back the next day and said, "You know what? Nope, I'm going to suck it up." Now there's some HR stuff that I have to work on, on the side there. But she called up and said, "Nope, I don't want to work for anybody else but mine." And that's touching, and it makes me feel really good that this person, and she's solid, man. She's one of the best performers, best junior leaders that I have on my team, and to know that, hey, she wants to stay with working for me tells me that I'm doing a good job. But it's still like, man, they're going to find out that I'm fake. So what I did was just a quick Google search. Actually, it wasn't quick. I spent a couple hours looking at this stuff, and I did a Google search on it, imposter syndrome. And one of the things I found is an imposter syndrome test to see if you suffer from it. And I hate using the word suffer, but if you suffer from it, and it's an online test. It's online psychology. You're not going to be diagnosed from something that you find online by any stretch. I know a lot of people who put a lot of weight in that bullshit, and it's not going to work. But I scored 94 out of 100 on the imposter syndrome test little thing there. And I'll have links to this in the show notes. So you can, if you want to go out and take it yourself, if you think that you feel this way. And here's what when you get to the end, the imposter syndrome test, it says, in the 1970s, researchers Pauline Clance, PhD, and Suzanne Imes, PhD, came up with the term imposter phenomenon to describe the behavior that the former observed in some of her students. It seemed that in spite of their top grades and achievements, they refused to take ownership of their success. It also said later on that the biggest fear is that people will soon discover that they are frauds and not as skilled, intelligent, or competent as we make themselves out to be, or they make themselves out to be. Research has linked the imposter syndrome to self-esteem issues, overachievement, and unhealthy levels of perfectionism. Now, when you get into the test, the first few questions are like no-brainers. It's like it's asking you, do you feel like you don't deserve the accolades or whatever that you're getting? Do you feel like you don't deserve the success that you've had? And so if you wanted to skew the results, you can answer that however you wanted to, right? So that when I first started taking this little quiz, I'm like, oh my God, this is a Cosmo quiz on how much he loves you or how great he is in bed or whatever the hell it is. But then you get to the second page and it starts asking different questions, ones that aren't so obvious, unless you're into psychology or have studied it, or that's your profession or whatever it is. But the questions were a little different. And one of the pieces of it, I look at unhealthy levels of perfectionism. I didn't research what are healthy levels of perfectionism, but that's a problem. And that's something that I look at. We have 9 metrics sometimes at work that I have to hold myself and my employees accountable to. And to me, there are 3 or 4 that are really important. They're the ones that get us paid. They're the ones that show up on performance evaluations and how we get our raises over the year. But if I'm not excelling in all 9, I flip my shit. It's crazy. And my boss is kind of a perfectionist too, but even he tells me, hey man, don't worry about that one so much. It's not even on your scorecard or whatever they call it. You focus on this, this, and this, and you'll be fine. But I can't look at it that way. I have a hard time. If we are dropping on something, I have to push that one back up. So take the test. I mean, if you're curious about it, I recommend it. Now, that one was just a regular internet thing. Another article that I found from Caltech University, which I actually like the .edu websites a little bit from respected universities because they generally are doing empirical research, generally. And it says, the imposter syndrome is associated with highly achieving, highly successful people. This makes imposters' feelings somewhat different from the concept of low self-esteem. Give me a second. I do want to differentiate that. The difference between the concept of low self-esteem and the imposter syndrome. I do not have a low self-esteem. That's not something that I have issues with. Really, it's man, I'm not arrogant either. So it's kind of hard to explain. And maybe those of you out there who can relate to what I'm talking about can really maybe spell it out a little better. But I do think highly of myself. I know what I have to do, and I know what I have to get done. I'm proud of some of the things that I do. It's just that success piece. If I do well at work, or if I do well on a project that I'm working on, if I do well on this podcast that I'm doing, and I don't know if I'm doing well or not, when somebody says, "Hey, Mike, fantastic job," it's like I shut down. It's like, oh my God, they really don't know, do they? They have no idea that this is all they're gonna see right through me. Any day now, this is gonna all fall apart. It's a never-ending cycle. It's just always a never-ending cycle. So how do you fix it? That's hard to say, right? Because if I knew how to fix it off the top of my head, I probably wouldn't be here talking about it today, right? The APA, which if any of you have written papers in college, are probably familiar with some of the APA and their formatting of the papers, but they actually have a lot of good stuff out there. The APA stands for, gave you a second to think of it yourself, it's the American Psychological Association. They have a whole page dedicated just to overcoming some of these things. Again, I'm going to link all the stuff. Talk to your mentors. So some person that they mentioned is in their 5th year graduate school and says he no longer feels like he doesn't belong. The thing that made so much difference was supportive, encouraging supervision. Hives 2, whoever Hives is, says that he's benefited from sharing his feelings with a mentor who has helped him recognize that his imposter feelings are both normal and irrational. So, reading this, I now can target some feelings in a conversation. But I know sometimes if I'm not feeling like I'm doing a good job, or I feel like I'm not as successful, sometimes all it takes is one of my mentors or people that I respect saying, "Man, you're killing it. You're doing great. Look what you're doing here." And yes, it's difficult to take the compliment because of the imposter syndrome, but it does kind of put me at ease, and I'm more efficient until that feeling comes back again. Recognize your expertise. If you could do one thing, both in your personal life and maybe your professional life, that is beneficial as you grow and develop as a person, as a career person, as a human being, is to set aside some time for yourself to further your own development, self-development, self-coaching. Recognizing your expertise sometimes is difficult. That could be because you feel like the imposter syndrome. It could be low self-esteem, and that's not something that I would recognize because I don't have that. But recognize what you're really good at. Remember what you do well. That's another step. So those 9 metrics that I talked about before, there are 4 or 5 things in those 9 metrics that I know that I'm just spot on. I'm great at it. And the other things that I'm not that good at, guess what I do? I make sure that those around me are trained in the areas that I'm not good at, because if they have a natural aptitude for these things, they're going to help me pull those things up, right? So maybe one of my areas of expertise or things that I do well is recognizing talent in others and developing that to ensure that they're helping me and the team pull those things up, right? Realize that no one is perfect. People say it, but do you buy into it? So if you think that, oh my God, me, right? These nine things. If I don't conquer these nine things, then I'm just a complete failure and I just don't belong here and I'm a fake and whatnot. Keep in the back of your head, no one is perfect. And a lot of times, to make myself feel better, and this is crazy, not feel better, but to kind of see where everybody else is at, I'll look at my peers around the state. I'm in Florida, so I'll look at my peers in Florida and see how they're doing. And if they're not doing well in that area either, at least I feel a little bit better, not about their failures, but that, okay, well, at least we're in line. Change your thinking. This is a tough one. Man, how easy is it if something's going on for somebody to say, calm down, or you need to think this way and not that way, when it's just not natural. So people with imposter feelings have to reframe the way they think about their achievements. IMS helps her clients gradually chip away at the superstitious thinking that fuels the imposter cycle. That's best done incrementally, she says. For instance, rather than spending 10 hours on an assignment, you might cut yourself off at 8. Okay, when I was in college, I graduated summa cum laude, but man, I didn't spend 8 hours on anything at one time. I mean, my thesis work, yeah, sure, I spent a lot of hours, but not 8 at a time or 10 at a time. Anyway, or you may let a friend read a draft that you've recently or perfectly polished. So, obviously, because these researchers are in academia, these things are going to be narrowed down or kind of catered to that. But you can look at that in whatever professional gaming life, even that you want to do. Change your thinking a little bit. Sometimes it's good to step back outside of yourself and say, hey, what is it that I'm not doing here, or that I'm doing here that I could do better at? Or am I doing the best here that I can possibly do, and it's actually sufficient? Talk to someone who can help. I mean, it's hard for me to admit that I need help sometimes, so maybe it's difficult for you, so it's hard for me to say, hey, go see a therapist. But if it's that bad, maybe a therapist can help. I mean, help Chris Metzen. He talked about it, got professional help, and feels better. I come from a place and a time where I guess it's not. Maybe I need to get over it. Hey, go get professional help on it. Who wants to say I'm going to see a shrink? But maybe I need it. Maybe you need it. Luckily, it's possible to get over it, I guess. I just don't know how that works. And hopefully with some of these resources, you can read up on it and take some steps. Because if this is the first time I heard it this week, I'm not the only one. There's going to be people out there who've also never heard it. But the important thing, I think, for all of us to remember is that we can find a way to appreciate our successes and celebrate them instead of pushing them off as fraudulent. I think that's possible, and maybe that's a willful changing of thinking. Maybe that's all it takes. It's all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So another thing on Chris Metzen's interview that I wanted to touch on was something that I think might have shocked many of us. Not shocked, but taken us all as a surprise. I mean, we see this guy come out on stage, and he's this full of energy, just a fireball, and you think, man, this guy is just full of passion, and he's this energetic all the time. And he opened up right away and said, hey, no, I'm not. And I'm like, wow. I mean, obviously people have different sides of themselves depending on their environment at the time, but I just couldn't imagine that here's this guy, and you watch him even on when the Orange County Choppers thing did their motorcycle deal with the Horde Alliance, Loktar. Anyway, and you just can't think that this guy really has these kind of outward appearance in public versus more introverted and private. And again, I can relate, rings a bell, and I'm sure a lot of you can too. And this is why I'm doing this episode on this kind of stuff, because I think we can all relate. And maybe some of us just ballsy and put it on the internet for others for critique, and some of us don't. But same thing with me. When I'm on my sales floor at work, man, I work the room. And I'm not, anything that I say about myself here by any stretch of the imagination is not meant to be bragging at all. I'm not that kind of guy. Well, clearly, if I have trouble with the imposter thing, then I'm not a braggy kind of person. But I do know, back up top, right where it said recognize what you do well. I work the room well. The person at the party who's the social butterfly. I talk to everyone. I build rapport. I'm the manager in my location, so people will look at me a little bit differently. I understand that happens. I can relate or empathize with just about anyone. My employees come to me all the time and say, "Hey, Mike, can you come meet my customer and help close this deal?" Yes, I can. I can generally do that, right? But in public or at home, you don't see that guy. I'm locked in a bedroom right now doing a podcast about video games, and people call me, and 9 times out of 10, I'm going to ignore the call. I'm not really all that social. If you saw me at BlizzCon, um, you might have seen me by myself. You didn't see me walking around with friends very often at all. I love my guild. These are the people that I dedicate 6+ hours a week with, right? And we spent a lot of time together at BlizzCon, but I still needed that time to be out by myself, be introverted a little bit, where I didn't feel pressured to be social, and they weren't pressuring me at all. I put that pressure on myself to be social, to be the outgoing guy, maybe to drop a joke or two here and there, and that is a natural me. And Metzen talked about the same thing. So that social butterfly, that jokester, whatever, dirty minded guy. I do have a lot of dirty jokes. That flirty guy, everybody knows I'm a little bit flirty too. That's natural. But the introverted piece, where I'm walking around by myself, and I'm even going to parties by myself, and I'll talk to people for a few minutes, but then it gets really awkward. That's all natural too. It's just really strange, and I thought, man, what's going on with me? But to hear Metzen talk about it, it's like, that's it, man. It's something with us, the creative folks, the gaming folks, the people who come up with good ideas. Anyway, man, I made this show last a half hour just talking bullshit about imposter syndromes and different feelings. And can you be a closet introvert? Like, is it possible to be a closet introvert? I mean, people have all kind of closeted fetishes and shit like that. But can you be the public guy? Can you be like this outgoing? I don't know. I guess you can, because I'm a closet introvert. I don't want to be talked to a whole lot. I don't want to talk to people. I'm not sure. If you have any thoughts on this or anything else, if you want to give me reviews, I haven't had any reviews yet. I'm on iTunes. I'm on Stitcher. I'm on Google Play Music. The list goes on and on. I'm on Twitter @GrownGG. But I'd love to hear from you directly if you have more extended thoughts. Questions @growngg.com. I'm working on a really cool potential. Well, it's not a potential interview, because I'm going to stay confident that we're going to get it done. Somebody that I think a lot of people would appreciate hearing from. But we're trying to iron out some details right now on the times. But again, links are in the show notes for all the articles and websites that I talked about today. And that's a wrap. That trumpet, though. Listen to this trumpet. Hits me every time. It's like so poorly played intentionally. I love it. See you next week, folks. Okay. No more recording there. 2 viewers. Yeah, I appreciate you sticking around. Man, that was actually kind of distracting when the chat room came up. I got to work on that. By the way, you're echoing. What'd you think? Gaming Crypt, are you still around? Anybody still around? Haven't had much interaction except from Gravion from before, so. Anyways, let me stop this stream. Appreciate everybody coming. Whoever came.